believe she's out and about. I cannot believe she's out there on social media. I can't believe I saw pictures of her drinking. She's supposed to be in her room rocking back and forth in a panic attack. Being just, oh my God, being severely emotionally traumatized. She's going to ruin the whole case.
And then, of course, you have the people on the opposite side of the spectrum.
I'm saying, yeah, see, we told you. She's not traumatized. She's not a victim. She was probably in on it the whole time. And this is just an indicator that she is not traumatized whatsoever.
And these comments have came after the Daily Mail has released an article earlier this morning showing images of Dylan Mortensen out with her friends at what appears to be a party. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. If an open conversation is something you prefer, then this is the place for you. Welcome to The Point, so let's talk about it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The Daily Mail article had made the statement that going back to at least October, Dylan Mortensen has been hanging out with individuals. She is going to costume parties and celebrating certain events with her friends. And we have had people come out expressing concern, making the statements that these images and these pictures are going to give the defense what they need to prove that she isn't traumatized. This is going to prove that she is partying all the time. And this is going to prove that she was more than likely partying and drinking the night of the incident, so her statement isn't valid. And then there are individuals who have questions into Dylan Mortensen's actions. They're looking at this article. They're thinking, okay, well, if she's so traumatized, why is she out? Why is she having a good time? We have been led to believe that she was in her room playing video games, getting counseling, and none of this came up. And I'm not going to assume to know where all of y'all are who watch this video. There are people who watch my videos and they think I'm crazy, I'm wrong. Bryan Kohberger is guilty, clearly guilty. Why can't I see that he's guilty? And then there are individuals who watch this and say, yeah, I have doubt. And then we have individuals who say, Bryan Kohberger is absolutely innocent. So I do have a wide range of people who watch these videos, and you can let me know where you fall down in the comments below. But it is almost as if, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have put Dylan Mortensen in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And to a degree, it is the fault of law enforcement why we have assumed so much about Dylan Mortensen. As far as I'm aware, the timeline involving her, we were originally told that there were 3 other roommates in the home and one of them wasn't there. Then that particular roommate becomes social media's initial primary suspect. Then we were told that there were 2 roommates, the third had moved out some time ago, and they were asleep. And they heard nothing and they saw nothing. Then when Bryan Kohberger is announced as the suspect, we find out that one of the roommates had witnessed an individual with bushy eyebrows, and everybody panned towards Bryan Kohberger, and then there was a debate on if he had bushy eyebrows or not, and the eyewitness was Dylan Mortensen. We were told in the PCA she didn't call authorities sooner, and this was because she was in shock. Then another article comes out, and it says, well, they weren't in shock. In fact, the roommates were texting each other. They heard everything. They were asking who's all right, what's going on, things of that nature. And then another story comes out that says not only was Dylan Mortensen alert and she heard the whole thing, she actually poked her head out the door and yelled at people to be quiet. And because of this gag order and the secrecy surrounding this whole thing, we don't know what to believe or not to believe. We have all assumed based off that article that she was dealing with some trauma and she was getting therapy, she was getting counseling to deal with what happened that night and the social media backlash that was directed towards her. But y'all let me know down in the comments below, is she now been placed in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario here? Because if she's sitting in her home, not being on social media, not going out with her friends, not living her life, not trying to heal, then she is in a sense becoming the 5th victim in this tragedy. And if she does go out and she tries to live her life and she tries to regain some sort of normalcy, she's attacked for that too. It would initially seem that for the purposes of this trial, Both the prosecution and the defense are going to be primarily worried about what happened that night. And I would also want to know from y'all, is an individual going out with friends and partying a possible indicator of an unreliable witness? But now the fact remains, she is a key witness, but she is a high-risk witness. And she was all this long before this story broke out. She was all this long before the story broke out of the trauma and her trying to deal with counseling. None of that has ever changed. And if you see it differently, let me know. But I have always just personally viewed her statement as something that was going to come under heavy scrutiny. And I am fully aware that when a lawyer attacks a witness, it can come across bad in the jury's eyes, but I would also say attorneys know this. I would be surprised if Logston is the attorney who handles Dylan Mortensen's cross-examination. I am assuming it would be Ann Taylor. But they can pick apart a witness without blatantly being aggressive towards that witness. And I would wonder if y'all's expectations are for her to completely become a recluse, to not live her life. In terms of trauma, PTSD, all these sorts of things, while I'm not a mental health professional, I am not aware of any psychologist or therapist or counselor who says the best way to deal with trauma is to make yourself a recluse, to stay inside your room or inside your home and never venture out again. And I would also wonder about the legitimacy of the news article when they talk about she has turned into a recluse. She's not leaving her home. It wasn't that long ago. There was an individual in that Rachel Morin case who gave an interview and then all of a sudden became one of the primary suspects. They had taken what he said in its entirety and chopped it up, sliced it together in specific orders, and made it seem like something it wasn't. And really, it wasn't until JLR found the individual and did a full, unedited interview that a lot of people could see the differences between what the mainstream media does and how they write their articles and how they present their stories versus a raw interview. So it is completely possible that the statements by her mother-in-law have been completely twisted and manipulated. It is also completely possible that a part of her healing process was to go out with her friends and start to regain some normalcy. Now, I haven't came out and done any videos railing on any one of the roommates. And that is really just because I'm not necessarily seeing anything pointing the finger at them in terms of a criminal indictment, so to speak. Now, if we're having talks about negligence or possible negligence or bad decisions, that's a different discussion. But it is seeming to me that no matter what she does at this particular point in her life, it is going to draw some sort of negative criticism from somebody. Because when she wasn't going out, the videos and the stories picking apart her reasoning for why she did what she did that night were coming out. And then when we see stories that are posted online of her actually coming out and hanging out with people, the individuals who have rallied towards her defense the most are now starting to attack her. And I am just not personally seeing the logic or understanding why any of this is going on. I would say look at these articles, read them if you want, but take it with a grain of salt. There have been errors pointed out in several of these stories. We know how the larger media can manipulate and twist things. And I am not necessarily seeing on my end an issue with an individual trying to move forward with their life. We can't expect either of the two roommates to seclude themselves forever. We can't expect them to lock themselves in a room, stay off social media until this trial is over, because we don't even know when that'll be. People do have concerns. Nobody wants to sit here and say, okay, well, if she does this, it's going to make her look bad. And then there's some potential for Bryan Kohberger to get away from this. But my point to that would be, if your entire investigation is hinging on this one kid who was probably out drinking that night, then your whole argument Bryan Kohberger that Bryan Kohberger is guilty is on thin ice to begin with. Now, I'm not saying any of that is true. We don't know what evidence the state has. We have certainly raised a lot of questions on this channel, but just going after either one of the roommates, regardless of what they seem to do or not do, it's just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. If you're seeing any of this differently, let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.